My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year. Most everything is great except one thing. If I tell her I'm sick / not feeling well / hurt, she refuses to believe me. If I have a cold, she tells me I'm faking it until it goes away and then says, "See, you are fine." I'm rarely sick, so it's never been a major issue. But she has zero sympathy when I'm sick. She grew up with hypochondriac parents who were always sick with something, often self-diagnosing themselves with fatal maladies. She has limited contact with them, and the time I met them, I was told by them that they didn't have long left to live. I get it, growing up in that household must have been awful. But what happened on Sunday just sent me over the edge. Girlfriend and my sister wanted to check out this event and we were all supposed to go. I woke up with excruciating back pain and could barely breathe. Girlfriend got so mad at me for ruining this that she wouldn't speak to me. As she was about to leave, I asked her not to leave because I thought something was wrong. She said no and left. I threw up in my bed and eventually called my parents. I was too embarrassed to call 911. And my mother and brother hauled me to the hospital. I was whisked back and after 20 minutes I was diagnosed with kidney stones. Fentanyl and gravel, and I had a CT scan and then went for a procedure to bust the kidney stones. 5 hours later and I was laying on my parents' sofa in a haze. I have never, and hope to never, feel pain like that again in my life. I was sure I was going to die. The attending in the told me it's worse than childbirth and that they've had it before, too. I didn't text my girlfriend throughout because I really didn't have the strength or foresight. I was drugged up and uncomfortable. My sister found out that I had been in the emergency room and soon after my girlfriend called me. She was pissed off I didn't call her. Then I reminded her that I begged her not to leave as I thought something was wrong. She got quiet and eked out an apology. I got furious and said something rather nasty things, unsavory things. In fairness, I was on dope, still sore, peeing blood and felt like someone had punched me in the gut. Standing was incredibly painful. I needed to take 2 days off of work and school. I rested in bed and the only thing you can think is the person who should have been there didn't even believe me. She's texted me this week a formal apology and wants one in return for saying nasty things to her. I've been avoiding her texts / calls. I felt like shit this week and picked something up in the So I laid low, took a few days off work and relaxed. She wants to meet tonight and talk about everything, but I'm still so mad I don't know if I should hold off seeing her. Is this as big a transgression as I feel like it is? Am I blowing this out of proportion because I felt so shitty? I just am so annoyed and angry. Girlfriend didn't believe me something was wrong and I wound up in the with kidney stones and needed a procedure. She was mad that I didn't call her, I was too doped up, and then when I blew up at her she felt bad. I'm still mad at her. 8 years ago, my sister got pregnant. The father wasn't involved and my sister didn't want the baby. But she also couldn't bring herself to terminate or adopt out to strangers. She approached me and my now ex-husband and asked if we would be willing to adopt her child. We weren't sure as we were concerned this would lead to issues down the line, but my sister insisted that it wouldn't, so we ultimately agreed. Before Lucy was a year old, my husband left us both because my sister lied about Lucy's father. When Lucy was 4, I got together with my wife, and we married last year. My sister has said that seeing me and my wife with Lucy, who is now 7, confirms to her that she made the right decision. When I first adopted Lucy, my husband and I told my sister that we wanted multiple children, which she said she was fine with at the time, but now my wife and I are looking into our options and my sister objects. My sister has been staying with us since July because her boyfriend kicked her out. She keeps asking Lucy if she's sure she wants siblings. Lucy has said that she does. And telling us she's worried we won't be able to give Lucy what she needs, and then today happened. We had an online consultation with a fertility clinic to talk about sperm donation. We told my sister about it and asked her to keep an eye on Lucy while we talked. The Wi-Fi went randomly on and off 3 times during the session, booting us out of the call each time. The 3rd time, my wife went to check it and saw my sister holding the power cord, and Lucy trying to plug it back in. Lucy saw my wife and said, "Auntie keeps turning the Wi-Fi off." Wife plugged it back in. But we could no longer get into the session. And we got an email from the doctor saying that if the Wi-Fi is going to be this bad, then maybe we should try a more local clinic, as we can't do online consultations. When we confronted my sister, she admitted that she wants Lucy to be an only child, so she has 100% of our undivided attention, and then said in a sarcastic tone, "Forgive me for only wanting what's best for my daughter." To which we responded that Lucy isn't her daughter. Things escalated until I said that my sister should go stay with our parents, and my wife drove her to their place. Since leaving a few hours ago, she's apologized and begged to come back, and my parents have also asked me to take her back. But I've refused. They've all called me an arsehole for kicking my own sister out after one argument, because now she's unable to get to work. No car and too far to walk, and she's back in her childhood room, while at our place she had a studio to herself behind the house. My partner has been through a lot. We had been dating for 2 years and planning a life together when she was diagnosed with cancer. At the time, she was in school for a dual graduate degree program and managed to finish it. Treatment was rough on her, and she struggled a lot through it, and hasn't done well mentally dealing with the unfairness of it all. How different her body is after surgeries, and the fear of it coming back. All perfectly understandable, and I've been as supportive as I can throughout it all. Now, all that said, she went into the graduate programs after we started dating, and one of the degrees was at a very expensive school for something that was only related and not required for the work she planned on doing, which would never pay very well. I questioned her about it gently at the time, but she was adamant about getting the expensive degree. It was her life. And we agreed it would be fine, because we could utilize public service loan forgiveness to pay off her debt that would total $100K. This was before cancer. I earn a considerable amount more than her. When we started dating, I made 4x, and even with her degrees I make 3x what she does. I've always been happy to spend money on her. And after having moved in together over a year ago and proposing shortly after, I really went into the mindset of it being our money. When we moved in, she was finishing her degrees and I covered 100% of our bills, including some tuition costs for an extra semester since she was slightly delayed by her treatment. This was totally fine because school was her job and she'd be able to contribute when she graduated, and even though I make much more, if we are both working full-time jobs, it felt fair. Now that she has graduated and started working, she is miserable at her job, mostly because she is incredibly anxious that she isn't doing it well, and doesn't feel like her school prepared her. She was already prone towards anxiety and depression. She takes medicine for it. But mentally she is in a very bad spot because of all this. On top of that, she feels like she doesn't doing enough for her health, mostly exercise, to keep her healthy to reduce the cancer from coming back, but she says she is too tired after work to do much else than occasionally go on a walk. Recently she got the idea in her head to start working half weeks to give her more time to exercise and stress her out about work less. She says not knowing for sure how long she'll live has changed her priorities about working. Before all this, she was a pretty driven type of personality, working multiple jobs. But working part-time doesn't meet the requirements for public service loan forgiveness. We've talked about it extensively, and she feels it is important for her to work part-time. But I am not very comfortable with the idea for many reasons. I get where she is coming from in her needs, but feel like she is looking for a quick fix to her problems. That puts us in a pretty big hole financially because she is so miserable instead of fully dealing with her problems. I'd be more okay with it if it was short-term while she sorted through some things, but she says she just wants more time to exercise and be stress-free, so she doesn't know when that would end. I just feel like she is taking our relationship, which is already unbalanced, and asking to make it a lot more so, and solely because she is in a position to do so because of my job. We can financially afford it, but I haven't been able to come to terms about the disproportionality it would create in our relationship. P.S. My longtime partner wants to start working half-time to relieve her work stress and give her more time to take care of her health, but it makes me uncomfortable because she has $100,000 of debt and it would make our relationship very unbalanced. So I recently got together with a guy from my hobby. He asked me out first, and I had some doubts that we'd work together as a couple because of the age difference. He's 35 and I'm 22. So, in my apartment, since it's an old house that was originally a single-family house, there isn't much soundproofing. And the floors creak when people move. I've gotten used to the sound of the guy upstairs getting up at 4 a.m. since he starts work at 5. And the sound of the girls in the apartments to either side of mine watching telenovelas till midnight, taking work calls all day and having friends over on weekend nights. I know when I play music or have friends over, some of the sound leaks through the walls. So I'd never get upset about hearing my neighbors because it goes both ways. So, when my boyfriend started coming over more often, he had complaints about the neighbors, which put me in an awkward place. He wanted to go speak to them or have me text them and I said no. For example, one of the early times he stayed over we went to bed around 10. He wanted me to ask my neighbor to turn down her TV. I said she didn't have it that loud and she turns it off at midnight anyway. At 4 a.m., he got very irritated with my upstairs neighbor getting up and cooking breakfast. I said that he would be done by 5 because that's when his shift starts. At 7 a.m., he was still trying to sleep in and the neighbor on the other side had some work calls that he said he couldn't sleep through. I offered him earplugs and he said he couldn't sleep with them in either. He wanted me to ask her to quiet down. He had similar comments every time he heard someone else in the building just living their life, especially if it was when he was in bed. I got frustrated with my boyfriend and told him, you can't expect to date a hot young 22-year-old and not want to deal with a 22-year-old's living situation. I don't know if you realize, but this is a normal apartment for someone my age. Hell, my neighbors are pretty great. Nobody's throwing loud parties on work nights. Nobody's having screaming fights. Nobody's having babies. The hot young part was in sarcastic air quotes because those were his words, not mine. He got irritated and asked why I was bringing age into it. And I said it's because he can't both want someone so young and also want someone with house kinda money. And he was being so out of touch with how normal people in their 20s live. He got really irritated with me bringing age into it. And even more annoyed when I'd respond to his neighbor complaints in the future with, okay, boomer. Or tell him that if he wanted me to have a rich person apartment, he could pay for it. It's not possible for me to get to his house on my own because I don't have a car and the buses don't go that far into the suburbs. So that would mean him driving 30 minutes from his house in the suburbs to pick me up, then an extra 30 to drive me to his house. Then an hour round trip early in the morning to get me home in time for work. It's a lot easier for him to visit me in the city. I am using boomer as a joke or a figure of speech to say acting out of touch and entitled to tell other people what to do. It is a common figure of speech to say, okay, boomer, to someone who is acting entitled regardless of their actual age. It's more of a mindset thing. I googled his property records for his house and he owns it with a woman who shares his last name. Holy shit. I don't know if she's his wife or ex-wife or what, but I'm out of here. I'm honestly freaking out right now, but I just gotta say, great big thank you to everyone who noticed red flags and made me question that. I've blocked his number. He can have fun figuring out where I went.